Well, if you joined me for the last nugget where we configured the local area network infrastructure in the UCS system, this nugget is going to be simple for you. We're going to do the same thing, but for the SAN. And there's so many parallels, so many similarities that you're going to feel very comfortable here. Now, just like we did in the LAN environment, we want to talk about the ability to create logical groupings of fiber channel protocol communication equipment. What are we talking about? Sure, the Cisco invention of the virtual storage area network. In the UCS Manager, we can have up to 32 virtual SANs active. This is a number that I would memorize. We have numbering ranges from 1 to 4,093. 4,079 is reserved, and when we're in the default N-port virtualization mode, we have 3840 to 4079 that are also unavailable. So watch out for identification numbers for our virtual storage area networks that we cannot use. Again, remember, we can only have 32 active at a time, so we're going to find plenty of available IDs. Just like with our virtual local area networks, we can create vSAN objects on both fabric interconnects of our cluster, on A or on B, or we can use the same exact logical name like vSAN underscore sales, and this particular name can be mapped to different virtual SAN IDs on the different fabric interconnects. Just like with our virtual local area networks, there is indeed the default vSAN 1, and this default vSAN cannot be deleted. For each virtual storage area network, we must specify a fiber channel over Ethernet VLAN. Remember, this particular VLAN must not overlap with the LAN VLANs that you're going to have in order to carry the data in the local area network. So be sure that this does not conflict with one of your normal, quote unquote, normal VLAN objects. Once we have those details about the virtual storage area networking capabilities mastered, creating vSANs is so simple. Look at this. We're on the SAN tab, and in the SAN tab, we have our vSANs node. Here we can see the default virtual storage area network. Notice we have our fabric interconnect, so we can create the independent vSANs, the vSANs on fabric A that are different from fabric B. And this is actually more common, right? In the VLAN environment, we noted that we so often, it's so typical that we create a global VLAN, one that is the exact same on both Fabric Interconnect A and B. In the vSAN environment, for redundancy's sake, it's often the case that we have different vSANs on the different fabric interconnects. But either way, whatever infrastructure you need to build, it is so simple. Notice we could go to the vSANs of Fabric Interconnect A and add with our wizard. We could go to the global vSANs, as I'll demonstrate now, and we'll choose the Create vSAN from the Addition button over on the right-hand side. Notice, just like with our VLANs, the name is required. We'll do a vSAN underscore test, and the name is imperative because this is actually what is used when we assign this particular vSAN to our virtual host bus adapter. Remember, it goes by name so that later on, if we wanted to, we could go ahead and change the underlying vSAN ID. So we have some abstraction there which are with our virtual host bus adapters, and this is another great thing about the UCS system. Notice then we have our fiber channel zoning setting. The default here is disabled, of course, because we're in N-port virtualization mode. So we're going to leave fiber channel zoning disabled. we're going to go ahead and select Common Global or Fabric Interconnect A only or Fabric Interconnect B only, or both fabrics configured differently. Notice we assign a vSAN ID. Let's do 101 right here. And then as we indicated, we're going to do our fiber channel over Ethernet VLAN for this particular vSAN. And again, we want to make sure this does not overlap with our normal VLAN infrastructure. We say OK, and we just created a virtual storage area network, and it was unbelievably simple to do that, especially coming from our previous nugget of experience. Now, do you remember on the LAN side of the house, we had the concept of port personalities? Always watch out for a port that's described as just having a nice personality. No, but seriously, remember we had that port personality configuration? Well, we have the same thing in the fiber channel side of the house. What's the default? Well, sure enough, by default, our fiber channel ports are uplinks. And sure enough, thanks to latest UCS software, we can go ahead and configure port channels. Something else that we can do nicely in our infrastructure is we can trunk our vSANs. So lots of great capabilities supported. We are uplinks by default with our native fiber channel ports on the Fabric Interconnect, and we can port channel these and trunk them. So first, let's go ahead and find our fiber channel uplink ports. We're going to go over to Equipment. We're going to go to our Fabric Interconnect A as an example. We're going to go ahead and expand it. We're going to go to the fiber channel ports that we created on the fixed module. Remember, with early versions of the Fabric Interconnects, you could only have fiber channel ports on the expansion module. But with newer models of Fabric Interconnect, we can have fiber channel ports on the fixed and the expansion modules. So notice when I go ahead and select fiber channel port 25, notice configure as an uplink port over here is grayed out. This is because we are indeed an uplink port by default. Notice we can configure a fiber channel storage port, and I'll have more to say about that in a moment. But what about that ability to trunk our virtual storage area networks? Well, over on the SAN tab, if you select your Fabric Interconnect, notice that this is a global setting. So we can go ahead and enable fiber channel uplink trunking. And it says, okay, fiber channel nhost mode is enabled. If you enable uplink trunking, all the vSANs with an ID between 3840 and 4078 will be disabled. Are you sure you want to enable uplink trunking? Notice we run into those reserved vSAN IDs if we do this uplink trunking. I'll say, yes, that's fine. And now we have, just for Fabric Interconnect A, enabled the ability to trunk our virtual storage area networks northbound on those uplinks. Now remember, one of the awesome capability is our ability to create those port channels. On the Fabric Interconnect, we can have up to 4 active port channels, and in each of those fiber channel port channels, we can have 16 ports bundled together. This is available, by the way, in the default NPV mode. It is also available, this capability, if we were in the fiber channel switching mode. Now, I'm sure you remember just how easy it was to create our port channels in the LAN environment. Guess what? Super easy in the SAN environment as well. You're just going to slide over to that SAN tab, and then under your SAN cloud area for your particular Fabric Interconnect, you can go to the fiber channel port channels area, and we're going to click the Add button over on the right in order to initiate the wizard. We set our port channel ID, we set our name, and then in the second step of the wizard, we add our ports to the port channel, just like we did, really parallel to how we did that in the LAN environment. So the last thing for us to cover here in what was a very straightforward and simple nugget is the attachment of fiber channel storage devices. Yeah, so we have a fiber channel storage ingredient in our infrastructure, and this is going to communicate utilizing fiber channel natively. It's going to use fiber channel protocol in order to communicate with our infrastructure. What's the big thing to know here? Really, the big thing I want you to know when we're attaching fiber channel storage and we're making a fiber channel storage port personality is that we need to be in switching mode on the Fabric Interconnect. It's worth mentioning one more time. What's the native mode of the Fabric Interconnect? N-port virtualization mode. And we switch out of this mode to switching mode when we go to create native fiber channel storage ports. Let me show you where you would go to get this done. First of all, you got to remember how you go in and set your Fabric Interconnect into the fiber channel switching mode. Remember, that's by selecting the Fabric Interconnect itself and going into the Set Fiber Channel Switching Mode option. Once you do that, you have the ability to go to your particular fiber channel ports and configure them as a fiber channel storage port. Notice it's going to say, look, you need to configure yourself into the non-NPV mode in order for this to work. So they will remind you about that very important configuration change you need to make. Now, when you have one of these storage devices, it does communicate with a virtual SAN that is just for the storage communications capabilities. That's created over on the SAN tab under your storage cloud area. So this is, again, similar to what we saw in the LAN type environment. So notice we can create a virtual SAN over here for the storage device utilization. So we love it. It's a little final exam time here in this nugget. Which statement is true regarding the SAN in UCS? Fiber channel over Ethernet VLANs can be a VLAN from the LAN infrastructure. No. We know these are going to be separate and distinct and they can't overlap with those LAN VLANs. 128 vSANs are supported in UCS. No, it is like, I think we discovered 32 vSANs can be active in the UCS infrastructure. In fact, I'm double checking that number right now. Yes, the maximum number would be 32. There's no upper limit on fiber channel port channels. No, there is an upper limit. We said there was 4 port channels supported. The port channels could consist of 16 ports. And finally, each vSAN requires a dedicated fiber channel over Ethernet VLAN. That is absolutely true. We set that up when we are creating the vSAN, and that is indeed our correct answer. And you have done a superb job in another nugget providing you configuration expertise in your UCS system. Congratulations. And obviously, I sure hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.